So this is what the trends are about, is how do you leverage this power? So one thing I would urge all of you to do is stop thinking about social media as social networks. Stop thinking about it as Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and I would urge you to take a broader definition of social media and entertain this idea that people are now the media. That people are now the media, regardless of the platform. And so social media really becomes about how do you leverage the fact that people are now the media? That someone has the power to reach their network, who has the power to reach their network. And how can you use that to amplify your goals and to further the visibility of the things that you care about? So to that end, we will look at 7 specific trends that are really shaping this. And the first trend is an identity-based ecosystem. And what do I mean by this? So, told you guys that I did my thesis on Twitter in graduate school, and the question I asked was, why in the world do people use this? It wasn't a naive, going in there and thinking this is awesome. I really was curious what allowed people or what tempted them to share what they had for breakfast. Right? Or I'm walking the dog, or some of these very mundane things that you see that I think a lot of us have been turned off by and say, what's the purpose? Why do people use social networks to share this type of information? And frankly, why do we use social media? And my hypothesis was that it was to connect and communicate with other people. It's a very human desire to connect and want to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. And what I found is that's the secondary reason. The primary reason people use social media is to showcase their own identity. To showcase their own identity. So, if you're anything like me, your first thought across my mind was, wow, we're a bunch of narcissists. Right? This is essentially the entire world is a giant selfie. That's what it's boiled down to. But if I stepped back a little bit and you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that it's not narcissistic. It's how we become who we are as human beings. In fact, if you go back and look at art, some of the earliest pictures and drawings are not necessarily of the world around us, but of ourselves. How you decide who you are, we often like to think it's because we're such individuals. That's especially the American way to look at it. But the truth is, we're all a reflection of what society has showed us that was acceptable and given us feedback, and the friends we make, and based on what they like. I mean, we're all sort of a reflection of each other in the grand scheme of things. And so what this means from a social perspective is the reason people get these accounts isn't so much that they're to connect with other people. That's great. That's a byproduct. But it's almost the thrill of filling out that profile. And what that means for anybody trying to do anything on these social sites is if you can tie what you're doing into someone's identity, into their personal brand, you have a much better chance of getting that message out there. So the things that I like on Facebook, for example, it's not because I like them as objective, third-party, neutral objects outside my identity. What this shows us is I like them because it says something about who I am. Does that make sense? So for example, when NASA posts something and I share it, great, NASA's cool, but really it's because I look smart in front of my friends. Right? Like, look at me, I'm posting NASA, not about, not the beer commercial. There's a certain sense of what people do and what they share and how it all ties back into what it says about who they are. So as an organization, as individuals who have agendas and certain things that you're trying to accomplish, anytime you can tie something back to that individual, to, how does this make someone sharing, how does this make them look? If you can ask yourself that question, and if the answer is it makes them look smart or cool, I promise you that post, that update, whatever it is, will have just a much stronger effect than something where you say, what does this say about NASA? Facebook understands this really, really well, and it's one of the reasons that they created their timeline feature, which, 2 years ago was a big issue and people didn't like it, didn't really understand why Facebook was doing it, but it's because Facebook understands this very fundamental truth. We're more excited about our cover photo than anything else on Facebook, even the people who complain about it. Right? People who are like, oh, I'm never going to do that, and it's like changed, 6 times a day. There's something about that. I mean, there's a reason why our computers still have wallpapers that we get to change out. It gives us that sense of ownership. It gives us a sense of reflecting our own identity. And it's a very powerful trend. It's not going away anytime soon. And so the projects, when you do them, and you think about you want to engage a bigger audience, you have to ask yourself, what does this allow them to say about themselves? And if you have a good answer for it, the chances are you're on the right track.